yeah, what do you think, man? You heard the leaks. What do you think?
Hold me now. I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm thinking.
Oh no, are you
maybe 6 feet?
Are you
one of the greatest songs from one of the worst bands in the history?
It is a good
music.
song. Yeah.
Yeah, Creed sucks.
Right. You think we're cooked,
yeah.
Rob? What is
those leaks are ass? Okay, if it's true, those leaks are garbage.
Oh,
like
no.
that's really, really bad. Okay, so this is 100% anecdotal, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't scale to like the entire movie going audience. After the Fantastic Four, I hit my sister up.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her if she was going to go see it.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'll wait till it comes out on streaming. And then I asked her, are you going to see Superman? And she's like, probably not. And I asked why. And she was like, because I don't care about Superman. So the Fantastic Four part is what really stuck out with me, because then she changed her tune. And she's like, I might go see it now. And I asked her why. And she's like, well, because the reviews are saying it's good. And that right there summarizes everything going on with the MCU. And with this, if this leaks are true, it stinks of just bad taste and desperation.
Yeah.
Because there were so many better ways to handle Doom.
Yeah.
Well, have you been following Bo DeMaio on Twitter?
Yeah.
He's been going on a tear.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like for the last 2 or 3 days, he's been going on a tear. Just kind of reading the riot act. Now, take it for what it's worth, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he's a disgruntled former employee.
Right.
So, I'm sure there may be some truth there, but better than 0% of what he's saying is also just anger at Marvel.
Sure.
So, but one of the things that he's talking about, and one of the things this feels like, is he was talking about how the idea of Marvel incorporating comic book content is just frowned upon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, don't come here with your comic book knowledge and your comic book stories. We're telling our own stories. And this kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
Right? No, I mean, I don't think any reasonable person would have expected them to adapt the incursions from Marvel Comics into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because even for a comic book fan, that's multiple movies. Even if you're not doing like a one-to-one adaptation, right? So we're not getting like, a movie that focuses on like the Red Planet that comes back later on.
Sure.
And is important, right? And they use it to like protect themselves from the Shi'ar. Like, even if we're leaving all that stuff out, like there's still a lot of things, right? You got the Black Priests, you have the Beyonders as the Ivory Kings, you've got the Molecule Man explaining the nature of the Molecule Man, the history of the Molecule Man, the whole retcon of it. I mean, there's so many things that you cannot do. But the idea of Marvel just coming out with this movie and being like, okay, guys, so the plot of this film is that like Doctor Doom wants to kill Steve Rogers because Steve knocking boots with Peggy Carter when he wasn't supposed to basically is laying waste to the multiverse.
Right, dude. What a
and it's like,
no, Rob, no.
Yeah, it's like really, right? So Captain America killed the multiverse because he was clapping cheeks. Like, that's what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Right? Like, is this like a giant? Is this like a
dead ass? What they're saying, bro? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 1990s propaganda campaign that's like against, it's like, abstinence is the best. And it's just like, it's like, what even? Like this is stupid. Like this is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard of. Number two, if that's the case, it flies in the face of everything about Steve Rogers, and not even like the nature of Steve Rogers, but it flies in the face of the fact that like that was his happily ever after, right? That was his send off. Right, that was like, following Steve Rogers' story from Avengers, from Captain America 1, all the way up to Avengers Endgame, and it was less. His story wasn't nearly as in depth as Tony Stark's, but I think it was more emotional.
I agree. Yeah.
Right, than Tony Stark's, and so it was like you get to the end of Avengers Endgame, and everybody in the audience just kind of nods their heads subtly, and it's like, yeah, he kind of deserves this.
Yeah.
And like that's he finally gets to have that life with Peggy Carter. And then Blarg, Doctor Doom doesn't like that, Blarg, right? And it's like, we got to undo it all. Yeah. And it's just like, why? Right? Like, why? They would have been much better served if they really wanted to get rid of the Kang Dynasty, or if they just want to like write the Kang Dynasty out. They would have been much better served if it just turned out that like all the superheroes on Doctor Doom's Earth died because of one of the Kangs. Yep. And he killed that Kang. and then he destroys the Kang dynasty, and then he takes their place and just gets drunk.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Became a Sith Lord. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, you dropped out for a second, but you're good. You're back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like Anakin Skywalker became a Sith Lord for the most hand-wavy reason ever, right? Like, I'm having these dreams that my wife is dying, so I'm going to doom the galaxy to 20 years of pain and suffering. Right? I mean, that's, I mean, and we're just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you can get away with a lot of hand-wavy stuff. So long as at the end of the day, it gets to like the point that people expect it to,
sure,
and the point that people were told that it was supposed to get to, right? Yeah. There's an infinite number of ways to like handle what was going on with like Anakin and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's the one we got, and people are just kind of like, cool,
yeah.
His insecurity doomed the galaxy, right? And so it's just kind of like, all right. With Doctor Doom, and this is I actually made a video about this on Twitter. Right. And maybe not to necessarily go off on this great big huge tirade about like everything wrong with the MCU, but like there's no sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no sense of like, here's why you should give a damn. And I think that if this leak is true, it kind of feeds into that.
Yeah.
Right. It feeds into, the whole, hey, we lost our Trinity for the new Trinity for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because the rights for Spider-Man went back to Sony, Chadwick Boseman passed away, and Brie Larson was harassed to the point where she didn't even want to be a major player in the MCU, right? Some of which she brought on herself, and some of which was just completely, uncalled for. So now we don't know what to do, right? Okay, well let's do like Kang, right? I mean, there's no reason to do Kang. Kang was never interesting enough to build anything around, but we can change that, right? I mean, what was it 15 years ago? People said the same thing about Tony Stark.
Sure.
But then Jonathan Majors and everything pops off. So it all just kind of feels like they're panicky.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between having all your plans blow up in your face and then having the wherewithal to look around and say, okay, but like we can still recover from this and we can still make it work. And having all your plans blow up in your face and then just descending into madness and just throwing out, whatever feels like it works.
Yeah.
And for all the problems the Marvel Creative Committee had, which you've read Johanna Robinson's book and you know about them all, right? Like all the problems that they also had some really good things.
Sure.
And if there was any one thing that Brian Michael Bendis and Dan Buckley and Joe Quesada and all those guys were good at, it was being able to pivot and being able to know how to adapt stories to what was going on, because it's what they were known for. Joe Quesada saved Marvel from bankruptcy. Well, partially saved Marvel from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Brian Michael Bendis, right, is shitty as some of his stories were and how the guy just couldn't stop talking in the stories, right? There was more talking than action.
Yeah.
The guy knew how to write stories in a way that could potentially blend in with everything else going on.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest downside is oftentimes he didn't.
He did, for sure. But he did heavy lifting at that time, especially after they lose Kirkman. He did some heavy lifting.
Yeah, like Brian Michael Bendis between 2000 and like 2007 was pretty solid. After that, he just kind of becomes like, I'm Bendis, I can do whatever I want, right? And just like wrote stories that totally defied continuity. Right. Before a period of time, he was really, really great at writing stories that fit in with continuity. But as it stands now, it's just kind of like, what the hell, right? It's just it feels so scattered, so disorganized, and so all over the place.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea of it being tied in, with Steve Rogers, I feel like just kind of makes it even worse. The point that I would make here, though, and to the point that you were talking about earlier, with regards to all these ideas of the plot threads, right? So like Black Panther's son, or what is an anchor being? How do the incursions work? I think very little of that is going to be I think they're just racing to Doomsday and Secret Wars. They're going to soft reboot. They're going to Crisis on Infinite Earths, the multiverse, and like that's going to be it. So I think a lot of those things are going to be explained. I still say like the best explanation for the incursions is to just say like everybody's anchored to the reality. But how many people ever actually leave it?
Yeah.
Or even know that they're part of a multiverse?
Well, there's just like, there's so much about it that doesn't make sense. Like the anchor being thing is like, what is even the point? Like, what do you mean? Like, so there's a singular being on a timeline that's connected to it. So if that being's not immortal, then like, what does it mean that the universe, it doesn't exist before that being is born? Is that like a branch point when they get born? Like, how does the universe exist before they're there? And then it's like, okay, but then it takes millions of years for the universe to die after that. So what even is the fucking point of this thing? Like, what is the anchor being? The anchor being is literally just so that he goes after Wolverine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's all it is so that he goes after Wolverine to try to save his world. And it's a reverse engineered, like, plot point for that. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, the only way to get around that, the only way to escape that issue and to make anchor beings make sense, if they wanted to bring that in and they wanted to involve it in Steve Rogers, is to say that anchor beings are like queens on a chessboard, right? That outside of knights, they can move any way they want to. They can go anywhere, they can do anything. And they will not negatively impact the direction of the universe, right? So, I mean, I would have said that, anchor being, like, I would have gone with the old school theory that so many of us had. Anchor beings were just the Marvel Cinematic Universe equivalent of Molecule Man. So, like, if an anchor being dies, their universe goes with it.
Yeah.
And, like, that's it, right? So if they die, they have to die of natural causes. They cannot die of an unnatural death.
Sure.
Right, but that went out the window with Wanda, who was the anchor being at the time. That went out, unless she's still alive or something like that. But the bigger issue, or I guess the bigger point here is, if they say anchor beings are individuals who can run through the time stream and have an effect on the time stream, or they can do anything they want to in the time stream without actually affecting the direction of time, then that would be the explanation for how Steve Rogers could go back, put the Infinity Stones back to where they're supposed to be, and then have a life with Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
But because, I mean, him having a life with Peggy Carter is not going to directly impact the time stream in any meaningful way, because but that presents any number of other quandaries, because at that point now he can do anything he wants to without affecting the time stream. Cool. Does that apply to Peggy Carter?
Yeah.
Right. It does, like how does that work? Right. Like how do you square that circle?
Well, I think
and that's why.
Well, just to go back to what you were saying about like the creative committee and everything, I think it's important because it's like they used to be able to lean on that group and when things got messy. And then the other thing, and look, I hate to admit this, but you have to if you want to be fair. James Gunn was one of these people too. Like, Gunn was somebody that Feige could go to and Gunn could figure solutions out because he had this vast comic book knowledge and he could, like, tap into other things and figure it out. And look, Marvel has always played jazz. So there was always a bit of like when they, by the way, Bendis actually, right? I don't know if you know this, right? I think you probably know this. I think it was in that book. Bendis is the one that writes all of the different versions of the post-credit scene for Iron Man 1, right? So, like, they were leaning on people to just, like, figure this out and set up little Easter eggs and things that maybe we could pay off later. And they were damn good at, like, figuring it out down the line. But what we're seeing right now is that, like, it got so out of control and there was just so much, like, just damage and different ideas on top of ideas and trying to jump into this thing. It is so lost. And then the other question is, and I think this is what everybody's thinking, is are they in their own way because they refuse to just directly adapt comics?
Oh, 100%.
Right.
100% they're in their own way because of that, right? Yeah. Like, so one of the things that Bo DeMaio was talking about is he was talking about Luis Desposito, or Luis Desposito, however you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
And he said one of the big issues is he was like, we're doing our story, right? So if you come in here with this pitch where you want to, like, directly adapt characters from comic books into the movies, it's immediately going to get shot down. And that's a problem, right? That is a huge problem. I mean, you and I think most comic book fans would agree, we don't necessarily want to see one-to-one adaptations of stories that we've already seen because we know exactly how those stories play out.
Yep.
I mean, is it cool to see that kind of stuff? Sure. But, like, we know exactly how those stories are going to end. So barring elements from other stories and incorporating them in, that makes things fun. That makes things enjoyable. But I get why they got rid of the Marvel Creative Committee, right? Because the MCC just kind of got a little big for its britches. And it sort of had too much power. But that could have been easily solved by just putting Kevin Feige over the Marvel Creative Committee
100%.
As opposed to next to the Marvel Creative Committee, right? And at that point, they answer to him.
Yep.
And then he has the ability to shoot down or approve, various ideas, which I'm sure is probably an idea where they're like, we should have done that. I'm sure Feige, if anybody, is probably thinking about that.
Yeah.
But I think that moving the MCU in the direction that it is now, 100% they can't get out of their way, because now Marvel Studios is what Fox was in the early 2000s.
Yep.
It's what Sony was and still is, right? Just suits in a room, making movies about comic book characters and ignoring the original source material. And I think it's important to be able to incorporate those elements in, because if they had, all of this would have been a lot simpler. Or if Kevin Feige just kind of brought back the Marvel Creative Committee, and if he's like, look, I don't want to bring in, Bendis and Quesada, because honestly, they just kind of got carried away with it all. Like, we'll go with other people. That's fine.
Yeah.
But what you need are people who can sit down with huge amounts of comic book knowledge, and not just comic book knowledge, right? I mean, I have that. People who have a desire or a wherewithal to tell comic book stories.
Yeah.
Like, I have no desire to or wherewithal to, I mean, I don't want to tell comic book stories. And honestly,
Right.
I don't even know if I'd be that great at doing it. But being able to tell comic book stories while at the same time having that knowledge about comic books, it translates to comic book movies. Because what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing is they're taking the concept of comic book stories and they're putting it in movie form. And when I say the concept, I mean long form storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, here's an overarching story of Doctor Doom taking over Earth. And here's how Spider-Man fits into it. And here's how the Fantastic Four fit into it. And here's how Captain America and Red Hulk and all these guys fit into it. And by dumping those folks or getting rid of those folks, 100%, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in this place where they just seemingly, those guys just can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's pride. I don't know if they're just self-assured that they're right. But the proof is in the pudding. Even if Fantastic Four was a fun movie, and even if that movie not breaking $1 billion, which I think it should have been able to break $1 billion. If this movie was made 10 years ago, it would have broken $1 billion.
Yeah.
I think as a result of the fact of people like my sister who were just sort of like, they haven't really released the best product. So I don't know if I'm going to go out and spend extra money to watch a movie that's going to be on a streaming service that I'm already paying for in like 3 months, right?
Yep.
So I'll just wait and watch it there.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, it's going to explode on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
It's going to be the most popular movie on Disney Plus for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think that in a lot of ways, getting rid of something like that and moving away from let's incorporate comic book source material into our storytelling is kind of what leads to where you are right now.
Yeah.
Which is just this immense feeling of disorganization, this immense feeling of no real cohesive plot threads, this immense feeling where there is no sense of urgency, right?
Yeah.
There is no direction that anything is going in. And it's not difficult to do with someone like Doctor Doom. It's not hard, right? I mean, Doctor Doom is a dick, and he's always looking to just attain huge levels of power.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you really wanted to, if you want to make Doctor Doom's motivation just incredibly simple, a king came to Doctor Doom's universe. Doctor Doom was smart enough that he defeated that king.
Yeah.
Then he reverse engineered that king's technology. Then he learned how to access the multiverse. And because he's just an extreme narcissist that's always going for extreme levels of power, he's like, you know what? I can probably destroy all the kings.
Yep.
And so I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to build an army of Doombots. We're going to invade the King Dynasty. We're going to kill them all. And then now I'm going to try to take over the multiverse. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Simple enough. Like you can do it like that, right? You can do it in the blink of an eye. Doctor Doom's not complicated. But when you have screenwriters and you have producers and you have people who just don't know anything about Doctor Doom in the comics, it's just a dude in a mask, right? Like it's Otto, whatever his name is, says I'm annoying, not gonna lie. Cool. I'm gonna yap some more, bro, just to piss you off. So yeah.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, I don't know. But the funny thing, like, I'm keeping an eye on the chat as I talk. Like, it's not hard to make Doctor Doom an interesting and compelling villain,
right,
while giving him a pretty simplistic plot.
Well,
right, and audiences don't need like the full-on understanding of Doom. They
totally
just need to know that he's a bad guy.
But I would say, to put it all together, like, it's not hard if you're not afraid to just do comic books. Ultimately, like, that's kind of what we're saying, right? It's like, it's not hard unless there's some weird reason that you wouldn't want to just take all of the most obvious shit from comics and just adapt it, right? And look, like, it's tough because, like, all of these conversations about Marvel and everything is really tough because they actually did the thing, right? So, like, they did what nobody else was able to do, and they built the thing up, and it was incredible, and it was fucking dope. And so it's, like, hard to say, like, well, Luis D'Esposito was obviously involved in that. He's involved in this. So it's hard for me to just say, like, oh, he's the problem, right? But maybe there's something else. Like maybe the reason Bo had that experience is not because like Luis has actually always been like that. Maybe something else happened. You know, we had this theory. We talked about it a bit in the community. It was like in the 2020, 2021 time period. And there were some big stories about like the Schulster estate was like winning new lawsuits to get even more compensation and shit. And Jack Kirby's estate was winning lawsuits to get more credit and more money and shit, right? Bill Finger, Bob Kane. A lot of these lawsuits were I forget what the name is for it, but like there were new updates to them, right? And we had speculated, like, I wonder if Disney is seeing these lawsuits and then they're trying to actually tangibly stop just directly adapting comic books so that there's no straight line to the royalties, right? So like if you just strictly adapt Hickman shit, he has a very good case to say that he deserves a lot more than just credit for written by kind of shit, right? So I don't know, maybe something actually tangibly happened, but either way you slice it, like there's no way around it. They are getting in their own way right now. And I think a lot of the shit they built up here, man, like it just like it got sloppy. They had to keep fixing it. The problem was it looked so obviously like they were just doing shit to fix it and not like they were actually doing story. And now it's like completely caught up to them to the point that Doomsday has got me nervous. Like, I don't know how you feel about this, but Doomsday has me nervous, not just because of the movie, but because of how the fans are acting towards it. I feel like Marvel could not conceive of in a million fucking years that they would spend Robert Downey Jr. money, get him back, make him Doctor Doom, and that the whole world might be like, nah, I'll wait for streaming. But more and more, I'm thinking that is actually possible.
Well, yeah. But again, I think it's because there's just nothing to really be excited for.
Yeah.
Because again, like none of us really know because we're not in those rooms. But what's happening gives all the trappings of them just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, right? And yeah, just flying by the seat of their pants, and they don't really know. And there's certainly some influence there, right? You know, Disney Investor Day 2020, Disney made Marvel announce the Fantastic Four, even though they didn't have anything. So now the expectation from the audience is that the Fantastic Four movie is coming.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, well, we have to make a Fantastic Four film or something like that, and it's got to tie into what they're doing. But again, that's why I say, like, when you create this parliament that Feige seemingly has, that doesn't really have much in the way of people who are knowledgeable about comic book source material, and they're not really knowledgeable about comic book storytelling, then you just end up in this situation where it's like, well, we're just going to make movies that have comic book characters, and you're going to run into all kinds of issues. Because those who are not familiar with comic book storytelling do not really know how to tell long-form stories, like what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing over the first 10 years, where it all ties together in the end, and it all has a point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's because what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing has never been seen before. It was never done before. Right. So you can't bring in somebody who was a screenwriter for like one of the Indiana Jones films. You can't bring in somebody who helped to plan movies like, you know, maybe Harry Potter, you could kind of do that, you know, but somebody who like planned these one-off films, you know, or something like that, because they're great at making that movie, but they're not great at planning for like 10, 15 years down the line. Yeah. And that's kind of where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is falling short. So I think that's why for most everybody who looks around right now, there's one gigantic question that's lingering on everybody's mind, which is, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah,
you know?
Sure.
And not only that, right? I mean, even looking at the first 10 years, right? Like, I mean, sure, like there is a point to be made where, God, who was it? Somebody just said it a second ago and I lost it, but somebody made the point where they said like, a lot of what happened in the first 10 years was kind of luck.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, there was a little bit of luck. And I guess when you really look over the first 10 years, I mean, how much was there really in terms of like, this is all going in the direction of Infinity War? Well, there was the marketing side, right? It was Thanos is coming. Okay, cool. So Thanos means Infinity Gauntlet, and it was you and me, and it was New Rockstar, Eric Voss, and New Rockstars, and it was Charlie over at Emergency Awesome. People who were just like making these videos. We're like, this is what it's all going towards, And so, if for no other reason than that, Marvel could just kind of ride that wave on some level and say, okay, well then, this is what everybody is. Let's do this and let's do that. And those little elements all came to play, but Thanos was synonymous with a thing. Thanos' most notable moment in the history of Marvel Comics was getting the Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah. It's the one thing everybody knows him for. There's the Astral Regulator, there's the Cosmic Cube, there's the Heart of the Universe, right? He turned Mistress Death into an Infinity Stone recently.
There's a chopper.
But the reality here is that Doctor Doom's not really known for any one particular moment, which means it becomes even doubly more important to make sure that if you're going to incorporate his character into a movie, or into a franchise, and it's going towards a particular thing, you have to make that very, very clear to people. And especially now, given how short of a timeline they have to establish him like that, right?
Yeah.
Not in a post-credit scene where he's holding his mask and Franklin's touching his face. No, you immediately have to establish what his motivation is, what he's doing, what his motivation is, what he's doing, and why he is the way he is. Otherwise, people are just kind of like, what's the point? Because it's not like we have another 5 years before Doomsday and Secret Wars comes out.
Yep.
It comes out next year.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man is the only movie in between.
Yep.
Right? So,
yep.
It's wild to me that they're doing that. Having said that,
it could still work.
Oh, sure.
That's the thing, right? At the end of the day,
it could work. But
well, because I've been thinking about this too, right? Because look, when I first heard this shit yesterday, it had me reeled down. I even told the person, I was like, this shit's gonna turn me into the Joker, right? Because I was cooking all these theories, brother. I had an 8-page script about Hydra Cap. You know what I mean? And then I get told this shit yesterday. I throw the whole script out, and I'm just sitting there. I think my wife came back from doing groceries or something. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No." Not really, dude. And I'm just sitting there and I'm in shock. But here's the thing. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? Ultimately, what it means is it kind of is what everybody else was saying it was. There was a part of me that thought maybe, despite everything, they figured out a way to really go for it, make it really cool, and it would be meaningful, and it wouldn't just be like a rush to the finish line, However, it seems like it is just kind of the rush to the finish line. At the end of the day, I think it's still going to be a really fun movie, and I think Secret Wars is going to be cool. There's a lot of hope for Secret Wars, but that's because they can just wipe their hands of everything and just cook, unabated, right? So that could be really cool. I think the thing that it is look, maybe we just have to accept that Marvel fucking cooked their shit. This is what it is. We got to rush to the finish line. Maybe there'll be some cool shit. Spider-Man 4 looks incredible. Doomsday will probably still be super fun. Maybe Battleworld's cool. And then maybe we just got to hope that whatever the reboot is or the reset or whatever, that it's just much, much better. That is technically an option.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say, but it depends on how it's done, because if they rush to the finish line in kind of a half-assed jog, or it just feels lazy and sloppy, no one's going to be excited, or not nearly as many people are going to be excited for what comes next.
I agree. Yeah.
The last thing they saw was Marvel and that's why I say these kind of things are important, right? Because as you know, I don't like just griping about things. I like offering solutions. So
sure.
What would have been a way for Marvel Studios to, and I guess hindsight is 2020, right? But what would have been a way for Marvel Studios to create a sense of urgency and to, at the same time, present Doctor Doom as somebody who was exceedingly dangerous.
Yeah.
And was a threat to all of existence? Well, number one, don't show him. Right? Reference him, because that creates an air of mystery. It creates an air of okay, well, then what the hell is he doing, right? A great post-credit scene for Fantastic Four would have had nothing to do with the Fantastic Four. You just jump to the TSA, and it's pandemonium and chaos. Why?
Sure.
The multiverse is collapsing.
Yeah.
And the multiverse is collapsing because unchecked incursions are happening.
Yeah.
Right? And they literally just established, incursions are not a slow thing. Right? It's not one of these things where, an incursion happens here, and then 5 years later, an incursion happens there. No. It's just all these universes colliding into each other, right? Like pool balls at the first hit. And all this panic and all this chaos, right? And while it doesn't look that way, you get the feeling of what it would be like if you just picked up with a ship where everything on the ship is failing. Right, there's smoke coming out of holes and things like that. Lights are blinking, sirens are blaring. The staff of the ship are like running around like chickens with their heads cut off. You know, you get that feeling, even if it doesn't necessarily miss that way, or it doesn't look that way. And it's like what's causing this, right? Kind of like what you saw at the end of Loki season 1, when the multiverse bounced back.
Yep.
And it's like, well, what the hell's going on, right? And that's where you just like you pick up with like B-15, you know, and she was like, it's him, right? Like Doom's finally made his move, and then you just cut to black. And then and while it leaves more questions than it answers, certainly right off the bat, right? Like it immediately establishes Doctor Doom is wiping out the multiverse, right? And maybe you can even just say like in that post-credit scene, like he's killed the Kangs and Doom is making his move. Like right there, it's just like, okay, cool. So he wiped out the Kang Dynasty. He's making his move. The Kang Dynasty isn't a thing anymore, and no one's really going to care if you don't show how he wiped out the Kang Dynasty. It's enough to know that he did.
Sure.
And then in turn, you have the imminent threat of the multiverse collapsing, right? And so the question then becomes like, how do you open up Doomsday? How do you open up Avengers Endgame, right? With, you know, and a great way to open up Avengers Doomsday is, you know, I guess you could have that Thunderbolts post-credit scene and that opens up however it opens up. But like within the first 15 minutes of the movie, an incursion happens, right? And it's just like, we have to get the hell out of here, right? I mean, we can't stay here, right? Like, you know, there's nothing we can do here, whatever that case happens to be, you know. But I think that creating that sense of urgency, creating that opening scene in the movie where shit's just popping off, you know, just isn't necessarily there.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like tension is so important, right? And even the tension of trying to, because you know, you see Thanos, and of course, yes, it's the snap, it's the stones, and that whole concept drives all the speculation, the theory crafting, but it's also driving the tension because you're like, oh, well, as we're seeing more of this happen, and especially after like Age of Ultron, when you get that vision, you're like, oh, this is headed to a place where he's going to be doing this. It's going to be really bad for everybody. But you don't have that. I would argue you did not even have that with Kang. That's a part of the function of like time travel and the timey-wiminess of it all. But really, like Loki's a terrible, like the introduction of Kang and Loki is very cool, except for the fact that it kind of undermines like his actual story, and then you don't see him again until Quantumania, and it's like totally different. By making him like variant focused and having him be all over the place and killing the coolest variant of him in the very first time he appears, I just think they fucked it all up with him, and they didn't actually build toward anything cool, and he's not really threatening, and you have no idea how he's actually going to affect like the rest of the universe. And that was with the guy they were doing stuff with. With Doom, he's like completely off to the side. They're not doing shit with him. But like, bro, there's so much they could have done. Speaking of comics, like the Rabam Al, like the Great Destroyer, the Black Swans, like, bro, that's like the perfect way to do it. Multiverse of Madness, that's Stephen Strange that we meet. Who beat you? Flashback, Doctor Doom. You know what I mean? Or flashback, Black Swans. Like Quantum Mania, flashback to Doom. Like you, obviously, right? Like there's so much of a better way that they could have built that all up. But you're right. Like without the tension, it has felt like a big slog. And now it just feels like we're just going to kind of release, get out of it, and hopefully try again.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes it kind of that's what makes it kind of wonky, and that's what makes it so frustrating in a lot of ways, right? Because as comic book fans, we've seen what happens when stories get told where you get a kind of hand-wavy reason to end the story. Like, okay, how many of you guys here in the chat right now who are watching this, how many of you guys remember Secret Empire? Where Red Skull rewrote Captain America's history using a cosmic cube.
Yeah.
And Captain America was a Hydra agent the whole time.
Yep.
Like, how many of you guys remember that story?
I like that story, actually.
It's a phenomenal, like it's probably one of the greatest Captain America stories of all time. Do you guys remember the ending of that story?
Isn't it basically like he was a cosmic cube that became sentient?
No. So the ending of that story was that the real Captain America had been quote unquote locked away in this kind of paradise place or something along those lines.
Okay.
But the only way to fix it was to find a new cosmic cube in order to undo it. And so in a tie-in comic, this weird mutant guy, I can't remember what his name was, and I think he's just one of those plot characters. He vomits up a cosmic cube. He has the ability to like vomit up whatever you need, I think, or whatever it is. He vomits up a cosmic cube. And they just use that to end everything. They bring Captain America back into the real world. He fights evil, and the story ends. It was the laziest ending ever. Yeah. Now, as I understand it, Marvel did that ending because public reaction to Captain America as a Hydra agent was so poorly received, which is actually kind of nuts because people who read comics and loved Captain America, they loved it.
Yeah.
But they wanted to do like a whole Dark Reign thing, right? Where like for a few years, it was going to be like the Marvel Universe was going to be a world under the control of Captain America. And people, there was just a negative reception to it. So they just hand-wavily ended it super fast.
Gotcha.
But it sucked because it was a phenomenal story. It was awesome, right? Like Nick Spencer, I think he's done any number of interviews talking about it. But we've seen what happens when that happens.
Yeah.
When you kind of get lazy storytelling. And that's why I say, like, having people in on the creative side who come from comic book land is incredibly important for this kind of thing because they tell you about stories like that. Don't do this because if you do, this is how people are going to receive it. People have received this like in these various eras. That's how people received it, right? The second version of the Clone Saga in the late 1990s. Right, that was a perfect example. A story that could have been 12 issues long and was just kind of spanned out for 3 years when it didn't need to be.
Sure.
Right, they can help you avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily seem to be happening here. So again, it's that's why I say I think they're just a lot of these things like what are incursions? What causes incursions?
Yeah.
Right? How do incursions work? I think a lot of these plot threads, unless it is specific to the plot of Avengers Doomsday, it's largely just going to be ignored. Right?
I agree.
Somehow or another, Monica Rambeau is going to end up in the main Marvel universe, right?
Yep.
End up back home, and like that's going to be it. Either that, Josh, or Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars is going to have to wrap up all these plot threads.
Yeah.
All of these plot threads. And that's going to be that it's going to create a couple of movies that are so disjointed and so disconnected that none of it makes any sense whatsoever. It would feel like doing too much at one time. It would be like if Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Secret Wars had to answer why Loki attacked the city of New York and who it was that told Loki to attack the city of New York, and revealing the person who told Loki to attack the city of New York, and then establishing that person's motivation for why they wanted to attack the city of New York, establishing what the Infinity Gauntlet is, what the Infinity Gauntlet is capable of, showing us what the Infinity Gauntlet can do, which half of that they did in the film, as well as introducing why explaining why the Guardians of the Galaxy formed, and explaining why the Avengers formed in the first place, and like all these plot threads, right? And maybe somewhere along the way, Tony Stark is lost in space. And so explain, or I guess maybe with Thor, right, being on Asgard and the whole Ragnarok thing. Well, now we got to explain that whole Ragnarok thing. What's Ragnarok? And bring in all these plot threads because at the end of this, if they do all that in this movie, they're going to have to explain how the mutant gene works. Because remember, we still don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah. Right.
Which would have to be done at some point, with the X-Men and why it is that America Chavez is a mutant and where it comes from, like how people are mutants in the main Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're going to have to explain and do a whole lot with the idea of the Eternals and the Celestials, right? And what the Celestials are doing right now in the midst of all of this, how they tie into it. They're going to have to expect what it was that happened with Kang, the Kang Dynasty, if they ever explain that at all. How Loki ties into it. What's going on with the Guardians of the Galaxy? What does a team look like? They're going to have to explain that. They're going to have to do all these things.
As you're saying all of this, I now understand why they were like, well, we can't do that. So let's just make it Steve Rogers broke the multiverse because he wanted to get some fucking
They would
cheeks.
have to run through.
Oh my
They'd have to run through all, like there's so much they would have to do and so many plot threads that they would have to wrap up. And that's the thing because I think that oftentimes when it comes to like these leaks that come out, whether they're true or false, people hyperfixate. Right?
Yeah.
So, well, according to the leaks right now, it's all supposed to be around Steve Rogers and everything else gets forgotten.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? But then once you actually zoom out, you're just kind of like, well, I mean, there's still Clea and Doctor Strange who are in the Dark Dimension dealing with the incursion that's going on there, right? And there's the Watcher, what's going on with the Watcher,
Yep,
right?
yep,
Peggy Carter and the Watcher, like this, their team, right? So like they still have those kind of multiversal Avengers, if you want to call it that. I mean, there's so many things, and that's the result of what happens when you go into a whole scenario like this. You have no plan. You throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and it's just like it's nuts. And it's bonkers, and it creates huge amounts of disorganization.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like it's why having comic creatives or people who are knowledgeable about comics on the ground level helping you build your universe is important, because then in turn they can say, so what's all this going to?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Like what's the point of doing what if? Like, I mean, because it's one thing to just say, what if in this universe shit pops off? Thanks for watching, guys. Peace. And like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's another to say, here's a what if universe. And here's a cohesive story throughout the entirety of the what if universe, which will likely need to come back in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
Because it's a hard sell to convince the average person of the MCU that we're never going to see the Watcher again, or we're never going to see him throughout all of this. Yeah. The entirety of the multiverse is collapsing, and you got Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, and we're never going to see the Watcher. Right? It doesn't make any sense. You know, that none of that, any of that stuff happens. Whereas if you have those kind of people on the ground level, it's like, well, why are we introducing the Watcher and what if outside of being a narrator?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we'll see. There's probably other stuff here that we're missing, and maybe it'll be cool when we see it. We'll be like, okay, the performances carried it. It was still really crazy. It was still really fun. The issue is, because they did something that was so incredible in Infinity War and Endgame and the build up to Thanos, which again, yes, it was a lot of luck, but at the end of the day, they did it. They fucking did it. We're always going to compare it to that, and it's just so clearly not that. And I think the issue with these new leaks is that they sort of confirm that it's not that, and they just kind of confirm like, hey, it is what it is. We're making do. We're just moving shit along. We're trying to go off hype. And then we're going to draw some stuff together, and then we're going to give you a cool Secret Wars. And the issue is it feels like watching a car crash in slow motion, because you know why they're doing it, and they're doing it because everything is fucked. And yet you can't help but be like, but if you could just do something really crazy, maybe you could actually make it really good. And it's just the signals you're getting are like, that's not possible. Instead, we're just going to do the best we can with the lackluster shit that we have left over from all this stuff. And it's like, I'm sorry, that's not great. Like that's not how I wanted to feel, Like, yes, was it a pipe dream to think out of all this shit they somehow found something that would be as equally cool and interesting as good as Infinity War and Endgame? Of course. But I think having that dream or having that idea would still have been so much more hopeful than like kind of where we're at right now. And it just kind of feels like, okay, we'll deal with whatever this is, and we'll keep our expectations low, and then hopefully Secret Wars is dope. It's like, that's tough, man. Like I don't know how that's gonna result as far as box office. Like that could really hurt it. And then the fear there is, well, what if that means that then Secret Wars underperforms? Because ultimately Doomsday is supposed to act like a preview or a trailer for Secret Wars. Like you should watch Doomsday, and then you need to know what's going on with Secret Wars. I just don't see how, with the current plot we have, we get to that point. It's a little bit scary,